one of the things that you've been working on yourself is using AI for coaching.
What I tried to do was create a template for this thing I call a Codex Vitae. I basically thought about, okay, what would be the most important questions that if the AI had access to, it would be able to give me like much more relevant and personalized responses. So everything from like, what is my ideal weekly calendar? What are some energetic black holes, reactivity triggers, burnout warning signs, decision-making principles, biomarkers, biometrics, prior experiment results, really like everything, like as much self-knowledge as you have. This is the one that I created for myself, which has like core personality traits. This is the bit that I was going to scroll to, was like decision-making principles. To what degree does it really factor this in when I'm asking questions? I'd say my experience has generally been that it has, and it's reminded me of some of these at times when it's been super helpful to do so.
I think a way to frame all of this is quantified self is finally useful. Sometimes one little reminder of a specific thing is like enough to just like totally change how you're thinking about something. Nerdy achiever people like us, we've always collected these sort of principles or like mental models or whatever, but you used to have to like remember them.
I know.
Which is a huge bummer. Jonny, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Dan.
Great to have you. So for people who don't know you, we are very good longtime friends. You are the creator of the Nervous System Mastery course and the host of the Curious Humans podcast. You're also have been an Every Writer for a while and just an incredibly interesting, fun, smart, helpful human. So I'm excited to have you on the show.
Oh, that's very kind, man. Yeah, I've been getting so much inspiration from this podcast specifically, and so I'm really excited to dive in and see what we explore.
I love that. I can feel it in the notes you sent over. They're very, very detailed.
Giant brain dump. Yeah, sorry for that.
We have a lot to talk about. I think the place that I wanted to start actually is sort of in. I think there's a lot of overlap in the kind of business that we're building, and then sort of AI, how AI starts to fit into that. So the way that I've been talking about Every recently is as a multimodal media company. So we publish writing, we publish courses, we publish podcasts, we publish videos, and we publish software. And thinking about Every as sort of this ecosystem with many different parts where we build audience through all the content that we write, and sometimes with the software that we make, and then we push that audience to the related products that we have, and that's how we fund the business and make more great stuff. And I think you're also doing that. It maybe looks a little bit different, but like explain how you're thinking about your own business and how AI fits into that.
Yeah, totally. I'd love to. So I think this has actually been like a recent conscious shift in my mind in terms of like how I think about the work that I do. So I started out as a kind of founder, went through the startup thing, then shifted into coaching. Then my role became more of like teacher and like curriculum designer for nervous system mastery. And now I feel like I almost view my role as like a kind of steward of this emerging ecosystem. And part of that is just because there are so many different projects that I've started, I'm involved with, I'm collaborating in, and they all are kind of like, they will have a central thread. But I really enjoy I enjoy bouncing between different kind of mediums, different types of projects. Some of it's solo, some of it's collaborative. And I've been starting to think more about like, how am I like, almost like the conductor of this kind of like orchestra, or the gardener, like you said, the gardener of a garden, like tending to different seeds and like seeing, where is my attention best needed? And then also, how do these projects, as with Every, there's always overlap between some of the kind of overlapping Venn diagrams. And so it's really fun for me. And obviously we can get into this, but AI is very supportive, I would say, when you're trying to do like 10 things at once. There's obviously dangers to that as well. And that's something I've been trying to be conscious of in terms of like, what is it that I actually say no to, and how do I protect my time and not get too, pulled in 1,000 different directions. But I'd say the last few months, it's felt very generative, and it just feels like, I think it's the way that I'm wired, is to kind of be this almost like kind of constantly curious, like aspiring polymath type approach to business building. And it's fun. Yeah.
Me too. It sounds like we're just in exactly the same place, and I'm kind of curious how that journey has been for you because we both come from startups, and in the traditional startup world, you're not supposed to do things like this. You're supposed to first of all, you're definitely not supposed to like write or make podcasts or whatever if you're running a company. You're supposed to be doing real work. Second of all, you must focus. You can't be doing five things at once because you can't do any of them well. And I think what's kind of interesting is like for me, yeah, I just like I want to do 50 things. Like I just love that. I'm very curious. I want to read a lot of stuff. I want to be involved in all these different projects. I get excited about stuff and I go down rabbit holes. And I think you're pretty similar. And what's interesting to me is I think that that's just like an archetype of someone who ends up being a good internet writer type person. Um, is you have all these curiosities and you're sort of this multi-talented polymathic type person, and a business where you can build up this sort of ecosystem is actually like the right kind of business for someone like that. But it's a bit of a struggle to almost allow yourself to do that because typical business advice is you must focus on one thing and do it really well and don't do any creative work while you're doing it. You have to like manage the team and like raise the money and whatever, and maybe at the beginning you build some of the product, but like that's only at the beginning. What has that journey been like for you, and just like psychologically?
Mm, yeah. It's a great question. I'd say that, I mean, honestly, if I was like optimizing for revenue and money in the short term, that might be a better route. But I think I'm kind of like optimizing for aliveness and trusting that like the more energy I have for this work, the more that that feeds into the things I create and the work that I do and the partnerships that I form. And so I'd say that like some of the struggles that I have is like deciding how and where to spend my time. I think that's probably like the number one thing. And I found that not giving myself too many kind of like hard deadlines has been very helpful because it allows me to move fairly fluidly depending on like where my interests are. So I don't know, to give an example, Kate from Every sent me an email the other day being like, hey, would you like to write a guest post about AI coaching? And I was like, yeah, that actually sounds great. I'll just like ditch everything I was doing and just like draft this essay. And like, you know, there's a scenario where like maybe I could have been spending my time on, you know, something else, but that was just what was exciting for me. And so that's what I lent into towards doing. And I think that's how I've been kind of thinking about this ecosystem in terms of like, how is it fueling my aliveness? And then also trusting that kind of tending to these projects. And for me, I'd say, I mean, maybe similar to Every, I have like one big project, which is the Nervous System Mastery course that generates, you know, a good chunk of the revenue. But then there's like the State Shift app, there's the Calm Cards project that I'm doing, there's the podcast, there's writing.
Well, tell us what those are, just so for people who are listening, so they get a sense of the breadth of the ecosystem.
Yeah, sure. So the Nervous System Mastery course is a cohort-based course, only 2 a year, so fall and spring. So a lot of spaciousness in between, which I really like the cyclicality of that as well, because it allows me to shift between different modes. There's almost like writing and promotion mode, going on podcasts, then there's teaching mode, then there's reflection mode, then there's just like spaciousness for several months. And then the other kind of, I'd say like ancillary side projects that are bubbling up are the State Shift app, which is a kind of nervous system regulation iPhone Android app with some AI features as well.
And you're working on that with Cassius Kiani, who's also in Every EIR, so a lot of overlap.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Cassius is great. He's a smart cookie, that guy.
Yes, yeah.
And Calm Cards, which is another collaboration with a company called Holsti, and that's kind of like a beautiful card deck based on nervous system down regulation practices. There's the podcast, which I've been doing for five or 6 years now, which is kind of like free mentorship, but also where I just get to like have interesting conversations with people that I enjoy spending time with. And then there's in-person retreats, one-on-one coaching that I do sometimes, writing for folks like you guys. So those are, and there's also some leadership projects that are very, very early stage, but yeah, those are for sure the main ones.
In your mind, like how does it all fit together, or do you feel when you say it has a unifying thread, like how do you think about what that is, and how do you think about communicating it so other people understand it, if you do at all?
Yeah, I think the unifying thread externally is promoting nervous system literacy and um, creating the conditions for aliveness in other people. Um, that's probably the central thread, and that looks differently depending on the project as well. But that's the central thread for most of the things that I'm working on.
Okay. And how has AI changed how what you're able to do, or how you're doing what you're doing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing that comes to mind, I think you said this on a podcast the other day, but like, you felt like AI makes you excited to wake up in the morning because you can just like,
Yeah.
like ask like really interesting questions. And I've also paid for Pro and have deep research, so that's just been unbelievably fun to explore. So I'd say like I just get to kind of ask questions, maybe 10, 15 times a day, especially when I'm outside and going for a walk. But I'd say more generally, it's definitely allowed me to become like 80% good at all of the various different hats that I wear. And I'm very conscious that I think my like skills or zone of genius is really in like curriculum design, facilitation. I'm probably like a grade B marketer, like I'm not that good. And in terms of like business strategy as well, I give myself like B to C. So really using AI and stuff like business admin, taxes, looking for an executive assistant. There's so many things that I think it's just like allowed me to do the work of probably like 5 to 6 people or more to some degree. And it's just, yeah, it's just reduced a lot of the friction that I think I would have had from my own ignorance, frankly.
Here's something that I just want to see if you're willing to share is I know you're using it for Jhana practice.
Yeah, sure, totally.
I want to see how you're doing that.
I'd love to. Yeah, yeah. Well,
Is it working?
I'd say it is. Yeah. Working. Yeah, to some degree. While I find this, do you want to explain what jhanas are for people who might not be?
Yeah. So, if you're listening to this podcast or watching and you don't know what jhanas are, please turn it off. I'm just kidding. They're like kind of like the new hot meditation state that I think a lot of the AI people like Nick Camerata got really into like a couple years ago, and then it sort of spread to like all the rationalists, and like Slate Star Codex had a big article about it. But basically, the idea is if you learn to direct your attention in such a way that you can attend to states of pleasure in your body, attention works as a little bit of a feedback loop, and there are ways to reliably attend to things that feel good in your body so as to create a feedback loop so that it sort of like takes over your whole body and you achieve a jhana, which there are different levels of jhana, and different levels of jhana are different feeling states. But it's basically like a state of bliss or joy is the first one. And there's all these like new meditation companies, like this company called Journey, which does jhana focused retreats. They're like not a traditional lineage. They kind of just like take pragmatically from every teacher that they run into, and the idea is you can reliably access states of pleasure and joy like on command, and they seem to have a pretty high success rate. So I've honestly thought about going because it seems kind of fun, but yeah, so that's the brief introduction to the jhanas.
Great, awesome. So, as context from my side, so I actually just got back from facilitating breathwork at one of the Journey retreats.
Oh, no way. How was it?
It's amazing. Yeah, I did one of their 10-day or week-long retreats last summer. And Stephen, one of the founders, has been kind of coaching me as well. So I've been using Stephen's feedback alongside ChatGPT.
And did you jhana? What's your jhana level?
Yeah, I actually hit it on the first day.
No way.
Yeah, and I've been working on getting, I think the frame that Stephen and I have is like deterministic access to jhanas 1 to 4 within like 30 minutes. That's kind of the goal at the moment. And it's honestly like the difference between a day where I spend like 60 minutes in jhana 4 in the morning. It's almost like a reliable indicator for like a 9 or 10 out of 10 day. It's like
Really?
It's really phenomenal.
What was the thing that that like unhooked you or got you into it on the first day?
Um, I guess like, I mean I've done a number, yeah, I've done maybe probably like 8 or 9 extended meditation retreats before, never jhana specific, but I've got a fair amount of practice under my belt. And I was just really motivated, honestly. I was like, this sounds amazing. Like, I just like dove in like full steam ahead. And it is, frankly, I think it's like, it feels like one of the most meaningful ways that I can spend my time. Um,
That's great. That's great. So, yeah, tell us about what is this document? What are we looking at? And for people who are listening, basically, he's got open a Word document that says John Exploration Log. So I guess it's just a journal.
yeah, so this is essentially a journal. And one of the ways that I appreciate the way that they teach jhana practice is kind of like designing your own experiments. So instead of kind of just following a guided practice, you're more of like constantly trying things, trying different frames, or moving your awareness in different directions. Or like, I don't know, some of the prompts are like, can I do this at 100th of the effort? Or one that I was playing was like saying I don't know, or like feeling into the humility of whatever arises. And then I've basically been keeping a journal, and this document I just export as a PDF, and then I'll upload it to this project. I've generally been using projects in ChatGPT to kind of organize, again, kind of speaking to the ecosystem thing, where there's like each project will have a different set of obviously project files and instructions. And so in the case of Jhana coaching, it has the journey instruction booklet that is basically kind of their um, recommendations for how to practice, and then my own experiments and explorations. So, I mean, this morning was actually a little bit of a like more of a struggle. So I could say like, this morning
I don't see if you're typing into ChatGPT. I don't see that.
oh, sorry about that. Yeah, let me just, so yeah, so instructions, relatively short here. I appreciate Rob Babea's framing as well. So I was like, please share in the style of Rob Babea.
So
Um,
it says basically you have a project in ChatGPT, a Jhana coaching project. It has custom instructions. And it's basically asking you to like reflect back what you hear. And then it also has files. So your log and then the journey basically manual. And so what you're saying is you're typing into your Jhana coaching project. This morning I attempted to drop into Jhana, but I felt like I was distracted
and couldn't access J1. What
and couldn't access J1.
advice do you have for me to try again later?
So this morning I attempted to drop into Jhana, but felt like I was distracted and couldn't access J1. What advice do you have for me to try again later? And basically, and this is with GPT 4.5, it's going to search through all your notes, all the guide, all that kind of stuff. And it's saying, it sounds like this morning's attempt to drop into J1 felt elusive because distraction was quite present and pulled you away from the entry point you are seeking. This is perfectly natural. Such experiences are simply part of this subtle practice. One thing Robert Bea might gently suggest is to start by recognizing what your experience this morning that your experience this morning is not a failure or setback. How were you relating to these distractions? Was there subtle resistance, etc., etc.? Remembering from the Journey Instructions booklet that meditation doesn't require a forcing kind of concentration, but rather something closer to gently resting in an easeful openness. I really like that, like sunbathing on a warm day. Uh, Reflecting on your notes, a few guiding points arise. Approach your next sit with curiosity, effort, and ease. As you noted, the aim isn't to force entry into J1. Springboard practice reminder. Um, okay, so this is good. What do you think, and how does this compare like to working with a teacher or doing it on your own, or yeah, how does this make you feel?
Yeah, so I think particularly the prompt around relaxing expectations, I think one of my biggest barriers is almost like trying to force my way there, or like having like a really strong expectation to get into that state, which is actually like one of the main things that blocks me. Um, so I think like just being reminded of that on a fairly regular basis is very helpful. Um, I thought that yeah, kind of the recommendation for like starting from humility as kind of a springboard practice is often also like a really nice reflection. And sometimes, I don't think this was the case this morning, but sometimes there'll be like an emotion that I'm not feeling or not, or maybe not even aware of, that is like blocking. Like Stephen calls it like being jhana blocked. And it's essentially just a cue that like there's some emotion in your system that is like looking to be felt. And so starting with like humility or like I'm sorry can also be a nice way in as well.
What do you think the I'm sorry is about? Who are you apologizing to?
So it's the I'm sorry is they have like a forgiveness meditation practice that I kind of view it through the lens of internal family systems. So sometimes there might be a part that was felt rejected, or maybe something happened yesterday that it felt a sense of shame, things like that. And so just by it doesn't have to be I'm sorry, but like kind of bringing a sense of like loving warmth towards it is generally really good for inviting it back in, and then it will stop resisting, and that will allow the like jhana juice to flow again, so to speak.
Very cool. And so this is how you use it basically. Is you go in and you talk to it. Is this like every day, or what's the usage pattern?
Yeah, so I've typically been I've been trying to kind of do small journaling after the practices in the morning, and then I'll add it to the Google Doc, and then usually on the weekends, on Saturday or Sunday, I'll re-upload the PDF document to this as like an updated version, and then get like more meta reflections of like, okay, how do I want to approach the practice next week? And yeah, it's been, I'd say there were like there was a breakthrough, I'd say like a week ago, 10 days ago maybe, that like reinvigorated my excitement for it as well.
Whoa, what was it?
It was being able to like spend probably like an hour and a half in the fourth jhana state, um but like it almost feels like a kind of altered state of consciousness in a way that the other three don't. And it was the first time I'd had that since the retreat in the summer, um and it was just like wow, it felt like what's the best way to put it, almost that I had like so much clarity over almost any area of my life, and I could have like dropped in an area and I would have just had like perfect clarity around like whatever that was, and combined with just a sense of um a lot of ease and just like deep sense of well-being as well.
Interesting. And did ChatGPT figure into that breakthrough at all?
So I think I've been working with Stephen and ChatGPT for maybe 3 weeks. So I think the combination of the two.
Who's better?
I mean, ChatGPT is definitely more available and has more time for me. And I think what I like about it as well is it's there like right after the session too. And so a way that I've like more generally been using ChatGPT is mornings I'll kind of do computer work, calls and things, and then I'll take our dog for a walk in the afternoon. And while I'm going for a walk, I'll just be kind of like voice recording memos into ChatGPT. And jhana practice is like one of the things that I'll talk about.
Interesting. So it's not advanced voice mode. It's like you're pressing the record button in ChatGPT.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
And how? Because I used to do that, but then it used to crash if you went for too long. And now I've been able to do like 2 or 3 minutes without it crashing, which has been good. But I don't know how long it goes. Like, how long do you typically record into it?
I typically won't do like super long recordings, so I'll do maybe maybe like max 2 minutes, and then because you can see the text, and then I'll just like maybe tweak the text if I said something wrong, if it didn't get something. But usually it's amazingly good at transcribing, and then get a response, and then send another one, and get a response, and send another one, and then maybe summarize at the end for like takeaways of things. But it's just been really fun, and I can do it like when I'm in the sunshine, I'm like in the park, and that's also when I think some of the more important ideas and reflections come through as well, whether it's related to jhana, business, personal, whatever's going on.
Yeah, I love being able to like think on the move, and think and just generally like think not at a desk. Like one of the things I've been doing recently is in the new iOS, it's like really easy to make a note and then record a voice note into the note, and then it will transcribe it automatically, and then you can just press copy and paste the transcription into ChatGPT. So in the morning, I just like lay on my couch and just like free associate for like a couple minutes, and then I just like throw it into ChatGPT, and and that's another nice way to do it. And I like that too because it means the text is like in Apple Notes, so like I can get it in other circumstances. You know.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I tend to I've been trying to kind of organize because for a while I just used chats in ChatGPT and it almost became like too confusing. So I've really found that separating out um different projects and specifically like for the different projects in the ecosystem for nervous system mastery, but then also like there's like one for personal reflection and there's one for like a research project that I'm involved with around latches. We're moving to Costa Rica in the summer, so that's like
What's latch? What are latches?
latches are. Have you heard of a guy called Mike Johnson?
Maybe it's a pretty common name. There are a couple Mike Johnsons, I think.
So he's also adjacent to the Jhana community, but basically he has a fascinating theory around that's building on predictive processing. It's called vaso computation, and the TLDR of his theory is that he thinks he's found the biological mechanism for how trauma is stored in the body. And so, but this hasn't been tested. Like it's still very much a theory and a thesis. And so I was using, I can maybe share the screen again here to give like a specific example. Um, but so let's say, yeah, Operation Latch Hunting. So basically, project
For
files.
people who are listening, he has a ChatGPT project called Operation Latch Hunting.
Yeah.
And the first chat is vaso computation ultrasound testing.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So the TLDR of the theory is a biological mechanism for how trauma is stored in the body. And Mike's theory is that it's stored in the smooth muscle tissue using the latch mechanism. And that, you know, when someone does breath work or a psychedelic journey or has an emotional cathartic moment, these latches will kind of open and release.
What's a latch?
So the latch is how the smooth muscle tissue will kind of like tense and contract and like store or buffer the emotional experience for the future, which creates a buildup of tension in the body.
I went to a massage therapist the other day because I've been having back problems, and I laid down, and she was like, "Even your scalp is tense." I was like, "Excuse me."
Man,
So
you've
I've
got
probably got some latches to
you've got
deal
latches
with.
in your scalp, yeah, to work through. But so the exciting thing here was like, how could we? Let's see if I can. So I'll just kind of go through some of these threads and see what we can find. But basically, I think this one was about seeing like how much it knows about the latchbreak mechanism and how it works. I was asking questions like, could they last months or years?
Wait, can I just
Um,
stop you there? So like, you're saying like, okay, so you have a chat. Tell me, stop at one of these. Okay, can latches? You have a chat with ChatGPT. You're saying could latches last months or years? And then it responds, "Lol, no," in all lowercase. Latch states are not known to last anywhere near months or years. They can be maintained for extended periods, minutes to hours in some cases, but not on those absurdly long time scales. Like, what, tell me about the personality that you've given ChatGPT here. Is that common to all of your projects?
yeah, so that's funny. So when I was doing this, I was using the Eigen robot custom instructions. I don't know if you've seen them
Okay,
floating around on Twitter, but
yeah.
it's like all lowercase and it's like, please use Zoomer slang and like give me like fun abbreviations and have a sense of humor. And I enjoyed it for I'd say like maybe a month or so, and then at some point I was like, this is kind of getting tiring. And so I changed it to something that was like more myself.
That's
Um,
very funny.
but yeah, so that's but then going back to like how I've been trying to use it, both trying to get a fellowship funding for Mike's research, but then some of the interesting stuff. So we've been thinking about, okay, how could we use an ultrasound device to actually map these latches and create like a blood flow map in the body, which would essentially be like a map of where trauma is stored in the body. And so you could do before and after experiments, let's say before a long breathwork retreat or before a jhana retreat or before psychedelic assisted therapy, etc. And so the theory was, and ChatGPT is actually incredibly helpful, maybe not this particular thread, but in giving specific, let's see if I can find the thread. Maybe it was this one. Nope. It's probably one of the ones in the chats, but it gave us kind of an overview of all of the different blood flow mapping technology that was out there, and then kind of gave me a list of companies to reach out to see like, hey, could we get our hands on this unit and actually use it into a test.
That's cool.
I think this was yeah, so it helped to create this document.
Okay, so this latch this latch thing is very interesting. I really want to know like if you do an experiment with it and how it turns out. I've been really into like all the sort of okay. Just to get on my soapbox for 1 second. I think the idea of science being done by non-scientists is going to be more and more common. I've been doing a lot of this stuff on myself, and I think a lot of like all the AI stuff makes the tools of science available much more broadly and changes, I think, what science is. So I really want to know if this works for you. But I think one of the things that you've been you have prepared to share or and have been working on yourself is using AI for coaching, which is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. When GPT-3 first came out and ChatGPT first came out, like that was one of the first things I did is started using it for therapy, and look at me now. And I would love to know like what you're doing, and specifically I think you're building little bots for yourself and thinking about how to teach other people how to do that. So tell us about that.
Yeah, totally. So I can I'll just share my screen with this window here. Um, this kind of this project kind of emerged from a workshop that I did for the nervous system mastery community. And so this was like originally designed to be for like a nervous system coach, but then I realized it could also apply to many. And I think some of the some of the or one of the insights I had from my own experimentation was that specifically like the more context that I gave it, the more useful it was. And it seems like most people that have been trying to use it for coaching have been only really giving it context based on either the memories that it has from previous conversations or just like very basic information about the problem they're having. And so what I tried to do was create a template for this thing I call a Codex Vitae, which is basically like book of life from this guy Buster Benson that did this back in the day. And so I basically thought about, okay, what would be the most important questions that if the AI had access to, it would be able to give me like much more relevant and personalized responses. So the idea was to basically go through this list. So everything from like, what is my ideal weekly calendar? What are some energetic black holes, reactivity triggers, burnout warning signs, decision-making principles, biomarkers, biometrics, prior experiment results, really like everything, like as much self-knowledge as you have available to kind of upload into a document. Now that the context windows are so large, it almost doesn't seem like that's a bottleneck anymore. And so I've been kind of obviously experimenting with this for myself. And then I think the other kind of key piece is deciding like what it is you need support with. And so this is the kind of set of custom instructions that I've been both using for myself and then adapting for some of the coaching clients that I have.
And so basically like so this is a website, right? Where do we find this?
So this is just I just host it on Notion. It's buildsyouraicoach.com.
Okay, buildyourai.coach.com, and it's got like instructions to build, basically build your coach. And the first set of instructions is like options for like the custom instructions, the style of communication, all that kind of stuff. And it's saying you're a world-class coach. Your purpose is to provide insightful, wise reflections. You have access to my Codex Vitae, the document in the project's file, which is what you were talking about before, which is like all the context on your life. And then there's some stuff around the style of communication. Speak with direct honesty, playful reverence, and compassionate challenge. Ask potent questions. You're laconic but impactful. Fewer words, deeper resonance, no wasted sentence. This is really interesting. So, are you saying that this is good for everyone, or is it just like giving people jumping off points and they can sort of like tweak it depending on what they like? Like, if I like being complimented, then I could say, "Please compliment me."
Yeah, exactly. So this is kind of like a base template, and I think there was there was another version where like you can like if you want to give it a name, you give it a name there, and you can also share like in the context of coaching. Some people might have different goals. Some clients are more focused on like how do I become a better leader. Others are more focused on how do I work with anxiety. So I think getting clear on what your specific goals are and putting that into the context piece. And then there's also a section around reflective practices, which basically give the AI coach permission to, go down some of these different paths. And so that's kind of the setup piece. And then kind of going down to, so I think also cadence is somewhat interesting to talk about as well, because what I like about having a human coach is that, we meet once every 2 weeks. There's a kind of defined time. There's also financial stakes involved as well. So there's like, I show up with a certain amount of energy and enthusiasm. And so I think like I've added like a weekly 45-minute session to my calendar where I just like use to have conversations and play and experiment. And then I've kind of been collecting questions or prompts that I've found useful or that I've heard other people use that have been helpful. So these ones are kind of more oriented towards the nervous system work, like what emotions might I be avoiding, help me do an energy audit, set boundaries, explore a real-time trigger, personalized supplementation, a template for saying no.
Is the supplementation plan thing, does it work?
It's good, man. Yeah,
Really?
it's actually surprisingly good. I mean, so I've been working with a guy called Marek, who's a fantastic functional nutritionist, and I basically compared like what he recommended versus what the ChatGPT recommended, and it was very similar and with very
Really?
similar diagnoses as well. Yeah, I was really impressed.
Fascinating.
Really
And
impressed. So,
what does it need to do good supplementation? Like I have like, what's that blood thing that Huberman promotes?
like function or
Yeah, it's like one of these things that like they'll send someone to your house and get labs basically. Like I have that. Is that enough to do my supplementation plan?
yeah, I think a basic blood panel. So I did. Let's see if I can find it here. But I did the uh, blood work. I did Superpower, which did the blood work, and then he recommended an organic acids test, which
Who's he? The
Marek, who is my functional nutritionist, um, and that's I think this is supplement recommendations. Yeah, here we go. So let me just share this. So I was also specifically looking to improve my fertility because my wife and I are looking to start conceiving, and so this PDF was the organic acids test. It's basically saying like, here's the gist, and then it gives here's the action plan: support mitochondrial function, neurotransmitter, enhance detox pathways, next steps, and
That's
then
interesting.
yeah, checking with Marek, it seemed like it was pretty much on point.
That's really interesting. And I'm curious, like for this Codex Vitae thing, like one of my experiences is I do this too, like on a probably a smaller scale, um, where when I learn stuff about myself, I'm like, please remember this thing about me. I'm like a people pleaser, so like make sure that I'm not like doing that, or ask me. I have this thing that's been really helpful for me, which is when I'm making a decision, ask me what I would do if I didn't feel guilty. Um, which I think is very effective for people pleasers, or at least my style. And but I find that it brings it up in situations where it's not necessarily appropriate.
Mm.
Um,
Okay.
not like it's inappropriate, but more like it probably doesn't apply, or like it feels like it's trying to massage anything not anything, but like I'm trying to massage more things about what I'm talking to it about into this whole like people pleaser thing than I think is appropriate. And so have you found that? And if so, like how do you work around it, or do you just not find that?
I haven't found that, but I guess like maybe on a more meta point, when I get a response from ChatGPT, I'm more like looking for the nuggets of gold as opposed to like buying everything that it says. And so even if like 80% of it is like on point, then that's somewhat worth it. And so
Even if it's 10%, if it's the right 10%.
right, exactly. So to kind of maybe give like a more personal example, like this is the one that I created for myself, which has like core personality traits
Oh
in
wow,
terms
whoa, wait, we got to start from the top. Okay,
okay.
so Core personality traits. And this is a document. This is your Codex Vitae. Jonny is likely an Enneagram 3 with 7 tendencies. What's a 3?
Three is like the achiever, I think is the Enneagram name for it.
And what's a
Um,
7?
Seven is like the adventurer, will
That's
like
interesting.
try 1,000 different things and
Yeah, 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 yeah,
exactly.
yeah. I used to be a 9, which is see things from all angles. Um, like the harmonizer, whatever, negotiator, I can't remember. But now ChatGPT says I'm a 4, which is like the
Loyalist? What's that?
it's a creative, like basically like flighty creative.
Yeah.
With like it's like a 1 or a 3 or something, like what the achiever thing I think is the wing.
You think that's the impact of AI on you? It's turned you into like a flighty creative.
Definitely. No, I think basically what it is it's the impact of over the last like couple years, I've gotten much better about just being able to like know what I want in situations involving other people and not like lose track of myself. Like it would literally would be very hard for me to even know what I wanted in a lot of like interpersonal situations. It would just get too stirred up. And I've been much better about like being able to maintain my sense of self. And it turns out when I am able to maintain my sense of self, I like have a lot of very strong creative desires that like shift a lot. And I've become like sort of a crazy artist, which is fine, you know. And it was always in there. It just got swamped by this other sensitivity that I have to other people and needs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay. So Enneagram 3 with 7 tendencies, core values, integrity, courageous curiosity, and aliveness. Very nice. Attentions and intentions and goals, preparing for fatherhood, personal meditation, reliable access to jhana 1 through 8, creating functional strength. Love that. What's foiling?
Oh, it's basically surfing with a hydrofoil. So it's looks like a magic carpet where it like goes above the water and then
That's
kind
sick. That's like what Mark Zuckerberg was doing, right?
of I don't know, maybe.
Okay.
That's not why I did
All right, never mind.
it.
Okay, business. 1,700 total NSM students, 1,000 paid users, 3,000. This is cool. Okay. Yeah, yeah. I have stuff like this. Like I have a Notion page that's basically like this.
Yeah. And
Um,
so then there's like a kind of ideal day week architecture that's in there as well.
that's
And then
cool.
this is the bit that I was going to scroll to was like decision making principles, and I'll try and update this on a at least like a monthly basis. And this is, you know, exactly like the thing you were talking about around the people pleasing tendencies. Um, and sometimes I'll in a chat thread just like mention something to see if it remembers that I wrote this, and it generally seems to. Um, but I guess the question is like, to what degree does it uh, really factor this in when I'm asking questions? But I'd say my experience has generally been that it has, and it's reminded me of some of these at times when it's been super helpful to do so.
I have the same experience, even if it sometimes overdoes it. And it that is super helpful. Like sometimes just that like one little reminder of a specific thing is like enough to just like totally change how you're thinking about something. And I feel like nerdy achiever people like us, like we've always collected these like sort of principles or like mental models or whatever, but you used to have to like remember them,
I know.
which is a huge
So
bummer.
annoying.
And
Yeah.
now you can be that kind of like pack rat for like interesting little tidbits or decision making principles, and ChatGPT can remember it for you, and you can keep the ones that seem to stick around and seem to actually work for you, and get rid of the ones that don't. And I think that's so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then I mean, ideally over time as well, like this document. So I only made this a few weeks ago. And you know, hopefully it gets better. And like what I want to do is have sessions where I almost like have conversations and think about, okay, how do I update this, and what are some of the questions that are most alive for me. Um, so and then kind of have my calendar in there as well. So it's been really really valuable, and it's just been really fun as well. Like it's given me another, I think, reason to do a deep dive into like self exploration in recent weeks.
Are you using 4.5 for this, or like what's your model of choice these days?
I've been using generally 4.5. I think the writing now that I've taken away the Eigen robot instructions. Which I'll show you what the custom instructions I've done, because I've thought about these quite a bit as well. This actually made a big difference to me, I'd say, in terms of like the amount that I used it, because it felt like it knew me more. And so let's see if I go to, where is it? It's under share. So I've gone back and forth between Claude and ChatGPT.
Yeah, are you using Claude still?
I do
That's
use Claude
interesting.
sometimes.
Yeah.
I think for like writing purposes, sometimes it like gets my voice better. I've noticed. But let's see. So if we go customize ChatGPT, so maybe actually this one's probably better. So yeah, I kind of like, this was a similar version to what was in the document, and then yeah. So the other thing is you can't use OPro on projects. So it's between O1 and 4.5. And O1 I'll use occasionally if it's like a business problem, but 4.5 more for just kind of back and forth exploration and
Are
reflection.
you using deep research? I feel like you'd be a huge nerd for deep research.
I love deep research. It's unreal.
Isn't it so cool?
It's just so fun. I mean, to give like a practical example, let's see, in Costa Rica. So we very recently made the decision to buy land and move to Costa Rica.
Wait, that's awesome. But why are all your chats? Why do they have emojis? Is that like a projects thing, or did you set that
I have added them because
by
it helps.
hand?
Yeah, I just like rename them. I just like rename the chats. Something about it. I do the same with tasks as well. Like it allows me to like, it's almost like get an overview. I don't know. It also just looks aesthetically pleasing. So it's like a weird quirk I
So
have.
you tend to use like a single chat for a long time rather than starting a new chat every time.
It depends, I'd say.
So you're renaming chats even if it's like not, even if it's like a sort of more throwaway one, or
if it feels like a thread that I want to revisit, I'll keep it. Otherwise, I'll just like let it be or archive it.
okay. It just everything looks so clean. I wish I was like this.
I'm trying to find out where. So I think we did like a risk profile, but there was one that was like, maybe I can just search for it. Basically, I was like, deep research. Please figure out like what are all of the logistical steps needed to move to Costa Rica. I think it was like how to get to. Oh man. Maybe I can't find it, but it was a deep research that basically, I think it was this one, land purchase guide. Yeah. So it was like everything that Kelly and I need to consider in order to move to Costa Rica. And it was incredibly helpful because this
Wait,
is
can you
something
scroll up because I want to just give people a sense for like what this is. Okay, so you said my wife and I are considering buying land in Nosara, Costa Rica, and please create a detailed brief outlining it, and it asks you some follow-ups, which it always does, which is kind of interesting, but is also kind of annoying because sometimes I'm just like, just do it. Like you don't have to
yeah.
ask me
And
questions.
sometimes it's helpful, right? I mean, sometimes I'll
Sometimes,
just
yeah.
say like do it, and then otherwise, in this case, it actually was helpful.
Yeah. So you answered some questions, and then it says, okay. So then it created moving to Nosara, Costa Rica, a step-by-step relocation guide, land purchase and process financing overview. Buying property in Costa Rica as a foreigner is very feasible, and it's just like the most detailed step-by-step land purchase steps in Costa Rica. Find a reputable realtor and the right plot. Hire a real estate notary. Make an offer. Blah 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 blah. Like all, like some of this stuff is stuff that you would like you'd be able to find it online, but it's just putting it all in a single place and sort of tailoring it to you. Choosing shipping belongings from Costa
Yeah,
Rica,
like
like what the
this
timeline is,
this I
and
wouldn't have
yeah,
thought of, the kind of applying for residency piece, import taxes. There was an area on how we'd move our dog as well, which was also helpful, and like how to know if we would be able to get residency there as well. That's in the
interesting.
document. It's just like everything that we need, and this was done in 15 minutes or less. And I've been kind of going through it. We're only like a third of the way through because we're still early on in the challenge in the process, but yeah, bringing our dog and like everything we need to factor in, and it's just been incredibly helpful. And this was like all from one 1 minute prompt. And so I've been doing it for that, and then also just like I have like I've only started adding chat threads to this, but things like what are some of the implications of of money with like AI, and it prepared this. Where's it gone? Or maybe it was a different thread. But I've really been enjoying deep research. I
ASI
think
impact strategy above.
there was one
Looks
that
like
was
maybe
uh,
Pokemon and shamanism.
yeah, oh yeah. That was a thing that I was just like late night. I was like, wonder if there's like a connection between shamanism and Pokemon there.
I would love, like, that's what I want. I want to have like a little section in everywhere. It's like your most embarrassing ChatGPT question, and people can like submit it.
Yeah, so like this, my wife was away for like a couple of days, and I was just like, just like pondering questions like in the evening as you do, and I was like, oh, what
Look,
it like
men need hobbies. Potential outcomes of artificial intelligence in the
it's
next three
like
to five
it's
years.
like an armchair philosopher's dream, right? It just gives you like all of these. I mean, there's half a small book here essentially, and it's also like really well written as well. It's not like just AI slop. I think a lot of it is actually pretty um well thought through. It's
It's
got the
quite
point
good.
where it's like worth reading.
One of the things that I've been doing that you might like if you're into this is it gets better with better sources. And so I built this app. I vibe coded this app that I've been calling Deep Background, where I can just upload anything onto Deep Background and it turns it into a website. And so then I have a website of all my sources that is like agent friendly, and I can just give it to Deep Research and be like, here's a question, here's like all my notes, all my books, like whatever you want, just like only use this site, and it works. It's pretty cool.
Huh. Wow. Wow. How is your I meant to ask you about you said that you were designing or vibe coding an app for your like OCD and like tracking tendencies. Like is that still happening?
Still happening. What's funny, which maybe you'll appreciate, is so like the app works. Basically, the way it works is I have a little bit of a log where I can go to the app and I take an OCD test every day. So like how are my symptoms is a standard OCD inventory called a Y box test. And then I also do I take a video of myself talking, just talking about my day, and then it sends it to this emotion embedding API. So it turns it into like basically where am I in emotion space, and the hope is I'll be able to train a model to predict from my video what my OCD score is, and then maybe if that works, predict it a day in advance. So like when is it going to get worse? When is it going to get better? All that kind of stuff, which would be really fun. Because if you can predict it a little bit, there's all this stuff that you might be able to do treatment wise. Like maybe I just like bump a little more Zoloft the day before, like stuff like that, which would be kind of fun. I don't really know. So anyway, so that whole thing works, and I have a bunch of data. The problem is that I have not been symptomatic.
Is that a problem?
It's horrible.
We need to trigger Dan's OCD so he can get his app to work.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, that's a pretty crazy thing for me. Like for many years, it happened. It was a lot. It was a lot that I was symptomatic. It just has not been as much of a problem, but it has always been a little bit more episodic where it'll come and go. I would say like I haven't really had anything significant in like 3 months, but it'll definitely come back. And when it does, I will like I'll gather more data, and then I think I'll have enough. And I'm like basically in the process of hiring a researcher to like help me put it all together. We just have a bunch of other stuff going on everywise. So like cash wise and focus wise, it's been a little bit more back burner, but it's something that we will do for sure this year, assuming things go well, and that I think will be really, really, really cool.
Yeah, it sounds amazing, and that's maybe a nice segue to something else I've been thinking about is like AI coaches feel like they're decent now, like certainly valuable. And I've been thinking about like what are some of the maybe like innovations or things that would allow them to be even better and like as good as humans. And so I'm curious like what your thoughts are on that. And then I have some thoughts as well that I've been noting down.
Well, I mean, the obvious one based on what we're talking about, like I think a way to frame all of this is quantified self is finally useful.
Mm, mm.
It used to just be you gathered a bunch of data because you're like a nerd and you're like, this is so cool. Like, look at my heart rate over time or whatever, or like look at my habits.
Look at my pretty visualization that I printed into a book and published in
Yeah.
a
And I'm guilty. Like I do that too. But now we can use it to like train a model to be like, well, how does X affect Y, or like what am I going to feel like tomorrow or whatever, or just throw it context wise into ChatGPT and be like, what do you notice? Which I do all the time anyway with dreams. And I mean, one of the really fun things is just doing it with meetings and just be like, how did this go? Like we had a big, not big crisis, but like we had a little crisis, like a little baby crisis this morning. And I had to kind of like assemble the team and be like, okay, what's the status and what's going on and how do we fix it? And I was trying to figure out my strategy, and I was also just interested in like, how did I handle this? And I threw it into ChatGPT and I was like, just give me some feedback. And it helped me a lot. It's really nice to have just like a calm, considered, friendly person being like, here's what I think, and I think that that's also the case. Like, you can think about coaching. There's two ways in which AI can be helpful for coaching. One is as a sort of like low cost alternative for people who wouldn't ordinarily like be able to have a coach or want to have a coach or a therapist, which I think is super valuable and really important. And then the other one is as a sort of like complement to or augmentation for a coach that like almost embodies what the coach might do or becomes something that the coach relies on to like get feedback from and basically have a relationship with where that thing can be available all the time. Because coaching as it is, like, your coach, when someone's working with you once a week, if they really want to and they put in the work, you can make that work. But if it's sort of like, well, I'm going to show up once a week, but you have to do all the heavy lifting, and I'm not going to think about it until next week, there's only a limited amount that you can really do with that person. Um, but AI allows you as a coach to have much deeper insight into what's actually going on, and the ability to like basically have some touch points throughout the week with whoever you're working with in context. And I think that helps create more progress.
Yep. Yeah. So that's something that I've been thinking about a bit as well. And I remember this was like back in maybe 2013, 2014 when AlphaGo just kind of like beat some of the chess. And there was this, I think Kevin Kelly maybe coined this, but it was this idea of like centaurs where human plus AI teams were better than just AIs.
Did he coin that? He's a beast.
He's a beast. I mean, I read it from him. I assumed he coined it. But he said everything relevant to AI like 10, 15 years ago. But I think this idea of centaurs is actually relevant here in coaching because like for me, knowing that like my clients have access to these like AI bots that I've kind of created, and then they can not only implement the stuff that we talked about in our session, but then also continue having chats and then bring stuff to the next session. What I'd love, like where I see this going, would almost be like a three-way chat thread where they could like tag me or tag the AI, or I could see all the conversations they're having and maybe like chime in if the AI hallucinates or gives them advice that I'm like, actually, no, that's a terrible idea. But it feels like such a value add. And then I'm imagining as well, like once, like let's say you use the Hume API and maybe like the Sesame powered voice as well, and like voice crosses the uncanny valley basically. I think that will really unlock like a new mode as well. And then if you combine with what you're saying about the quantified self, if you can kind of pull in all of that data, maybe from like Google or to-do list apps or API, and this and like the deep, like the Codex Vitae, the deep context gets like just added to like automatically without you manually having to do it, then I think it just like unlocks so much usefulness.
Yeah, totally. This is actually an interesting question for me because, like, with the OCD sort of quantified self thing, like, I eventually want to add other people to like build models with or for to predict stuff. Do you have a thing that you'd want to be predicted?
um a thing, how likely am I to get into jhana the next day?
That's kind of cool, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and there's actually a number of like I've been tracking factors in terms of like if I sleep more than 8.5 to 9 hours, it's more likely. If I have a less stressful day the day before, it's more likely. If I accessed it meaningfully in the previous week, it's more likely. There's actually a bunch of variables that I'm kind of tracking for myself that I think would inform the odds or the reliability for sure.
Fascinating. Yeah, it would be fun because like eventually what I want to be able to do is have you be able to post a bounty and be like 10 grand if you can predict it, 20 grand if you can make it more likely, you know.
Like that.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll see. Interesting. Yeah, anything else you wanna go through today? Anything else we haven't covered?
No, I think that's pretty much it. There's nothing else that kind of comes to mind.
Sweet. Well, Jonny, this is awesome. Always a pleasure. I love what you're doing. If people are interested in your course or in your app or anything else you're doing, where can they find you?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. The best website is nsmastery.com, and that's the nervous system mastery course. There's links to a free self-assessment, to the State Shift app, and yeah, and then the Curious Humans podcast is actually, they can listen to the conversation we had a few weeks ago. That's one of the recent ones, and that's just Curious Humans on most podcast apps.
Awesome. That was honestly one of my favorite episodes favorite interviews I've ever done. So thank you for that. People should definitely check that out. Sweet, man. Well, I'm excited to hang out. I guess I'll see you sometime in May. So I'm excited to do that.
Yeah, epic.
Oh my gosh, folks, you absolutely positively have to smash that like button and subscribe to AI and I. Why? Because this show is the epitome of awesomeness. It's like finding a treasure chest in your backyard, but instead of gold, it's filled with pure, unadulterated knowledge bombs about ChatGPT. Every episode is a roller coaster of emotions, insights, and laughter that will leave you on the edge of your seat, craving for more. It's not just a show, it's a journey into the future with Dan Shipper as the captain of the spaceship. So do yourself a favor, hit like, smash subscribe, and strap in for the ride of your life. And now, without any further ado, let me just say, Dan, I'm absolutely, hopelessly in love with you.